Stop everything because this headline is detonating timelines and has the internet split between disbelief, outrage, and pure chaos. Boosie, the man known for being unfiltered and fearless, allegedly broke down in tears after Sexyy Red made a statement so wild, so reckless, that fans are still trying to process it. No sneak diss, no vague subliminal. A claim so personal and so damaging that people immediately started asking if this just crossed from messy into irreversible. According to what's circulating online, this didn't start as a public feud. It started quietly. Tension, distance, subtle shade. Then suddenly, Sexyy Red allegedly confirmed something that flipped the entire narrative on its head, suggesting Boosie was intentionally harmed as payback. The word revenge alone sent shockwaves through hip-hop, but when fans connected it to health implications, the story went nuclear. Clips began spreading, reactions spiraled. Boosie was seen visibly emotional, shaken in a way people aren't used to seeing. Comment sections froze, Twitter erupted, and the question everyone started screaming was the same. If this is even partially true, how did things get this dark? Supporters rushed to Boosie's side, calling the situation cruel and dangerous. Critics questioned timelines, motives, and whether this was exposure or provocation. Others warned that this wasn't just gossip anymore, this was a line you don't uncross. And the most chilling part? Neither side fully walked it back, because if this was a joke, it wasn't funny. If it was a claim, it was explosive. And if it was revenge, it may have ended more than just a relationship. Whatever really happened, one thing is clear. This story is no longer entertainment. It's a public implosion, and the fallout is only beginning. The moment this story hit the internet, it didn't just trend, it detonated. Not because of receipts, not because of a clean timeline, but because of the sheer audacity of what was being claimed and how fast people ran with it. Boosie's name, Sexyy Red's name, one sentence tied them together, and suddenly the internet was in full meltdown mode, arguing over something so serious that even repeating it felt dangerous. It started with whispers, not headlines. Not blogs, whisper-level chatter bouncing around comment sections and livestream chats. People noticed tension first. Boosie's tone shifting in recent appearances. Sexyy Red making offhand comments that felt sharper than jokes, but vague enough to dodge accountability. At first, fans brushed it off as clout noise, two loud personalities orbiting the same space. Then a clip surfaced that changed everything. In that clip, Sexyy Red didn't name Boosie directly, but the internet did the math instantly. She referenced a situation involving intimacy, betrayal, and what she framed as karma. The word revenge appeared casually, almost recklessly. And that's when things spiraled. Because once that word entered the conversation, people stopped laughing. They started speculating. Blogs ran with interpretations before facts. Commentators added their own spin. Timelines blurred. And suddenly, a narrative took shape that was far more extreme than anything either party had clearly stated. The internet decided this wasn't just drama, it was something darker. Something involving harm, something irreversible. And in that environment, nuance died immediately. Boosie's reaction only intensified the chaos. He appeared on camera visibly shaken, emotional in a way fans weren't used to seeing. His voice cracked, his bravado evaporated. He didn't explain, he didn't clarify details, he just looked hurt. And that image, a man known for aggression and confidence suddenly looking small, fueled the worst interpretations possible. Supporters flooded his comments, saying whatever happened, this had gone too far. Critics questioned why he was responding emotionally instead of factually. Others warned that people were spreading allegations that could ruin lives without proof. But by then, the story had already mutated beyond control. Sexyy Red didn't rush to clean it up. She didn't post a clear denial. She didn't correct the assumptions being made in her name. Her silence, or selective engagement, was interpreted as confirmation by some and trolling by others. Every meme, every reaction video, every stitched clip pushed the narrative further from anything verifiable and closer to pure internet hysteria. What made this especially volatile was the subject matter people thought they were discussing. Health, consent, intent. These aren't joke topics, but the internet treated them like gossip. Doctors, lawyers, and mental health advocates began chiming in, not to confirm anything, but to warn how reckless the conversation had become. Because accusations of intentional harm aren't just messy, they're life-altering. Still, the damage kept spreading. Boosie's emotional response was clipped, slowed, looped. People speculated about what he must have known or what he was reacting to. None of it confirmed, all of it amplified. In the court of public opinion, feelings replaced facts. Insiders, anonymous, unverifiable, claimed the situation had been blown wildly out of proportion. That comments were taken out of context. That jokes were interpreted as confessions. That two personalities known for shock value were now trapped in a narrative neither could fully control. But once the word infected entered the discourse, the story crossed a point of no return. What's chilling is how quickly the internet decided guilt and victimhood without evidence. How fast outrage overtook responsibility. How easily a rumor became confirmed simply because enough people repeated it. And in the middle of that storm were two real people watching their names turn into weapons. By the end of the first wave, one thing was clear. This wasn't about truth anymore. It was about reaction. Boosie looked broken not because something was proven, but because something was believed. And beliefs, once cemented online, don't care about corrections. As the clips kept circulating and speculation kept escalating, a dangerous question lingered in the background, not what actually happened, but whether the internet had already decided the ending. And once that happens, the fallout doesn't need facts to keep burning. It feeds on silence, emotion, and the hunger for the next shocking twist. The second wave didn't make the story clearer. It made it more dangerous. What followed wasn't new information. It was amplification. Reaction videos multiplied by the hour. People with no connection to either side began speaking with authority, stitching together clips, tone shifts, and facial expressions as if they were evidence. The internet wasn't asking what happened anymore. It was arguing over what it meant, and that distinction mattered, because meaning is where narratives become irreversible. Boosie's emotional appearance became the centerpiece of the storm. Every pause in his speech, every crack in his voice, every moment where he looked down instead of into the camera was dissected relentlessly. Supporters said he looked blindsided and hurt. Critics said emotion wasn't proof of anything. Others argued that the reaction alone suggested something had gone very wrong behind the scenes. None of these interpretations were grounded in confirmed facts, but they didn't need to be. The visual did the work. Meanwhile, Sexyy Red's online behavior poured gasoline on the fire. She didn't issue a statement shutting the narrative down. She didn't say, "This isn't what people are saying." Instead, she posted and deleted cryptic messages, jokes, and reactions that felt intentionally ambiguous. Some read them as trolling, others read them as defiance. A few read them as confirmation. That ambiguity became the most explosive element of the entire situation. The internet split into camps instantly. One side insisted this was reckless internet gossip being taken too far, that no one had actually confirmed anything, and that people were spreading potentially defamatory claims without evidence. The other side argued that silence in the face of such serious speculation was irresponsible, especially when the rumors involved harm. The fight wasn't about facts anymore. It was about responsibility. Commentators began warning that this had crossed a legal and ethical line. Accusations of intentional harm, especially involving health, aren't just messy celebrity drama. They're accusations that can follow someone for life. And yet, the more people warned others to slow down, the faster the story moved. Caution doesn't trend. Shock does. Boosie's name started trending alongside words that should never casually trend with anyone's name. That alone caused panic among fans. People pleaded for clarity, for someone, anyone, to step in and shut the narrative down before it spiraled further. But no one did. And in the absence of clear correction, the speculation metastasized. Anonymous accounts claiming insider knowledge flooded social media, each offering a slightly different version of events. One claimed comments were taken wildly out of context. Another claimed Boosie felt betrayed by how far things had gone publicly. Another insisted the entire situation was being exaggerated by people hungry for outrage. None of these accounts could be verified. All of them were shared thousands of times. What made this phase especially disturbing was how quickly humor crept in. Memes, jokes, exaggerated reenactments. People turned a potentially life-altering rumor into punchlines, and that's when the tone shifted from chaotic to cruel. Once something becomes a meme, it loses gravity, even if the subject matter is serious. That's when reputations start taking damage that can't be undone. Sexyy Red's fans argued that she never explicitly said what people were accusing her of saying, that interpretations had run wild, that people were projecting meaning onto shock value language. Her critics argued that words matter, especially when spoken by someone with influence, and that failing to clarify in a situation like this was reckless at best. Both sides talked past each other, and the truth, Whatever it was got buried under volume. Boosie remained visibly affected. He didn't come out swinging. He didn't try to dominate the narrative. That restraint was interpreted in every possible way. Some saw it as pain, others saw it as shock. A few saw it as strategy. But the longer he stayed quiet, the more people filled in the blanks with their worst assumptions. Professionals began chiming in again, not about the people involved, but about the internet's behavior. Doctors reminded audiences that speculation about health status is invasive and harmful. Legal analysts warned that repeating unproven allegations can have real-world consequences. Mental health advocates pointed out how quickly public shaming can push situations into dangerous territory. The warnings were everywhere and largely ignored. By this point, the original context of whatever was said or implied was almost irrelevant. The story had outgrown its source. It had become a case study in how fast rumor can turn into truth when enough people repeat it with confidence. Boosie and Sexyy were no longer controlling their names. The internet was. And hanging over everything was a chilling realization. Even if this entire narrative was built on misunderstanding, exaggeration, or bad faith interpretation, the damage was already happening. Corrections rarely travel as far as accusations. Clarifications never hit as hard as shock. As the second wave peaked, the conversation took on a new edge. People weren't just debating what happened. They were asking whether it was already too late to stop the fallout. Because once accusations involving intent and harm take root online, they don't fade quietly. They linger, mutate, and resurface whenever a name trends again. And as the noise reached a deafening pitch, one question hung in the air with uncomfortable weight. Was anyone going to step in and shut this down? Or was the internet about to take this somewhere no one could walk back from? By the time the third wave hit, the story had stopped behaving like news and started behaving like a cautionary tale. Not about Boosie, not about Sexyy, but about what happens when the internet decides it understands something it was never actually told. The chaos wasn't escalating because of new facts. It was escalating because of unresolved belief. And belief, once hardened, doesn't need evidence to survive. At this stage, people weren't even quoting original clips anymore. They were quoting other people's reactions to other people's interpretations. The story had become a copy of a copy of a copy, each version more extreme than the last. What started as vague comments and emotional reactions had transformed into definitive statements in the minds of viewers who had never heard a single confirmed detail. The rumor wasn't spreading, it had already spread. Now it was settling. Boosie's emotional response took on a different meaning in this phase. Early on, it was shock, then it was pain. Now people framed it as finality. "He looks done" became a repeated phrase, not because he said he was done, not because he confirmed anything, but because the internet decided tears equal truth. That assumption alone carried enormous weight, even though it had no factual foundation. Sexy's continued refusal to directly address the most extreme interpretations became the focal point of criticism. Not because she was proven wrong, but because she wasn't correcting the narrative. For some, that silence felt reckless. For others, it felt intentional. And for a smaller group, it felt like someone realizing the story had grown too dangerous to touch without making it worse. Legal analysts and industry veterans started speaking more urgently, warning that the conversation had crossed into territory where reputations could be permanently damaged regardless of reality. They stressed that accusations involving intentional harm, especially health-related, are not things that fade with time or clarification. Once associated with a name, they linger in search results, in whispers, in future headlines. That warning landed hard, but not hard enough to stop the machine. The internet's attention began to shift from outrage to outcome. People asked what this would mean for future collaborations, appearances, and opportunities. Not because anything had been proven, but because perception alone can close doors. This was the most sobering phase of all. The realization that rumor doesn't need to be true to be effective. It just needs to be repeated. Boosie's supporters grew more defensive, calling out the cruelty of turning unverified speculation into entertainment. They argued that whatever disagreements or messy interactions existed, none of this justified the scale of narrative being built. Sexy's supporters pushed back just as hard, insisting she never said what people claimed she did, that shock humor had been weaponized against her, and that she was being forced to answer for something she didn't actually confirm. Between those camps was a growing group of people who were simply disturbed. not picking sides, not defending or attacking, just alarmed at how fast things had gone from ambiguous to catastrophic without any factual anchor. They weren't asking who was right, they were asking how this happened at all. As days passed, the story began to cool on the surface but rot underneath. Fewer posts, fewer trending hashtags, but the associations remained. Comments under unrelated videos referenced it casually. Jokes lingered. The narrative had become part of the internet's shared memory, and shared memory is incredibly hard to erase, even when it's built on misunderstanding. No dramatic resolution came, no press conference, no definitive statement that cleanly shut everything down. And in a strange way, that lack of closure cemented the damage more than any confirmation could have. Because uncertainty leaves room for imagination, and imagination online always leans extreme. What remained at the end of this cycle wasn't clarity, it was consequence. Two names now tied together by a rumor so serious that even debunking it would never fully undo the association. That's the part people don't think about when they hit share, or laugh at a meme, or repeat something just in case it's true. The most chilling takeaway wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about scale. How quickly language meant for shock can spiral into life-altering narratives. How easily emotion can be mistaken for evidence. How silence can be read as anything the audience wants it to be. By the end, the story wasn't about what happened. It was about what the internet did with what it thought happened. And that distinction matters because one can be corrected. The other rarely is. This didn't end with a bang. It ended with a stain, quiet, unresolved, and likely to resurface whenever either name trends again. And that's the real damage. Not what was said, but what can never fully be unsaid once the internet decides it believes it. Before you scroll away, pause for a second, because this is exactly how situations like this harden into truth without ever being examined. What you just watched isn't just a viral moment. It's a live example of how fast speculation can outrun facts and how dangerous that can be for everyone involved. If this story made you uncomfortable, conflicted, or even skeptical, don't ignore that reaction. Hit like so this conversation doesn't get buried under louder, less responsible takes. Drop a comment and say what you think, not what you heard, not what went viral, but what you believe after actually paying attention. And subscribe now, because stories like this don't end when they stop trending. They resurface, evolve, and get rewritten, often without context. Engagement matters here. Silence lets rumors solidify. Discussion keeps space for nuance, accountability, and correction. Once the internet moves on, it almost never comes back to clean up the damage. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about slowing the machine down long enough to ask better questions. Stay locked in, stay critical, and don't let shock replace thinking, because once a narrative sticks, undoing it is almost impossible.